Okay, good evening everybody, and welcome to the My Decorative Quilter 2 block of the month. This is block 2. It's a trapunto block, as you've seen some pictures already. It was designed by Rita Gazard, and it's presented by myself, Mark Garrett. I am a National Floriani educator. And when we do these, I always like to show you a picture of what the finished block is going to look like. So as we go through the software instructions and later the assembly instructions, you have some idea in your head of where we're headed with it, so it makes a little bit more sense. So this is what the block looks like in its finished form. Of course, yours is going to look different because you'll be using different thread, different fabric, but you get an idea of what the trapunto effect looks like. And as DJ mentioned earlier, we're very excited about this new trapunto technique. We call it trapunto the Floriani way. Just want to, as an aside, we have a new design disc out called Simply, what's it called, DJ? Simply Pieced Alphabet? Is that what it is? DJ,
sorry, I was muted. I muted
okay.
myself. Simply Quilted Alphabet.
That's it, Simply Quilted Alphabet. And it's got some beautiful alphabet blocks that also use this technique. But in this project, we're going to show you how you can take any design and turn it into this trapunto. So I'm going to go ahead and close this slideshow, and we're going to start up our My Decorative Quilter software. This is what it's going to look like when you start it. If you do not see this screen with the grid or a white screen here, you need to come up here to the upper left-hand corner and click the new page icon here. So I've already gone ahead and done that, so I've got a nice blank screen here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our work area so that we're all using the same parameters for our work area. For this project, we're going to actually switch from inches, which is the default, and you can tell you're in inches right here up in the corner. We're going to switch to metric. The way you do that is you put the cursor anywhere over this ruler or the side ruler. It doesn't matter, any of the rulers, but we're going to use the top ruler and simply right-click, and you will get a pop-up menu that gives you the grid and workspace options. So we're going to change to metric simply by clicking metric. And when you do that, you can see now I've got metric up here, but our grid lines are still in inches. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to right-click, and we want to make sure, first of all, that Snap to Grid is checked. So if it's not checked, you want to check it. You can have Show Grid on or off. You can leave it on or off. I'm actually going to turn it off by clicking that, so there's no grid, but we're still going to have Snap to Grid on. And then I'm going to click Grid Settings, and this is where we're going to change our settings. Right now it's at 6.35 millimeters, which is actually 1/4 of an inch. We're going to come in and change it to 5 millimeters. So I'm going to change to 5 and 5 and click OK. And that's actually going to make our grid show up as millimeters. And if I show the grid one more time, and I can actually do that with this grid icon over here. This is also a shortcut for showing and hiding the grid. You can now see that my grid lines line up with the millimeter mark. So I'm going to turn the grid off one more time so we don't have the grid to bother us. And actually, you know what? I'm going to turn the grid back on. I like the grid on. The printed instructions show the grid off, but I think this next step is a little easier with the grid on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start creating our block. And we're going to do that with our rectangle artwork tool. And that's right here. If you see this rectangle right here, you can go ahead and click on it. If you don't, you want to click this down arrow and select the rectangle right from here. So we're in rectangle mode, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. When you do that, your cursor is going to change, and if you can see that, my cursor now has a little rectangle by it to show that I'm going to draw a rectangle. And we're going to start our block at -75, which is right here, and at +75. And you can see over here, I can't actually see +75 because I'm zoomed in too far. So I'm actually going to zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to go to a 75% zoom so I can find -75 and plus 75. So that's actually right here. Now you don't have to be perfectly on the mark with this because our snap to grid is turned on, and it's going to snap right to the right place as long as you get close to it. So what you're going to do is you're going to click and then you're going to drag down, but when you drag you're going to hold down the control key and it's going to make a perfect box. And as you come down you want to go to plus 75 on the top and it'll automatically go to minus 75 on the bottom. Now here's the important part. You want to let off the mouse, and you can't see it or hear it, but you can actually see that my block changed, and then I'm going to let off the control key. If you let off the control key before you let off the mouse, it's going to no longer be a perfect square. So you want to make sure you do it in that sequence. So you're going to start up here and drag down here, and you can see now I've created a perfect square, and that is going to be, because we started at minus 75, went to plus 75, that's going to be 150 millimeters on a side. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add an embellishment to this block for the beginning of our trapunto design. We're going to do that right up here with our embellishments icon. So you want to go ahead and click that. You're going to get this window to open. It's going to first show you the birds. We're going to switch to feathers, and you do that right here by clicking the down arrow to find the feathers right here. Click on feathers and you're going to see quite a few feather options here. We're going to use the second one in right here, feathers 01B. So when you click that, it's going to bring that feather design in, and then we're going to double click the magnifying glass here to zoom in to get everything centered on our screen. And double clicking that magnifying glass is a shortcut for zoom to fit, which fits everything all on one page. So I've just double clicked it, and you can see now it's a little bit larger for you. The next thing I'm going to do is show you the sequence view right here. In the sequence view you can see that we've got two items selected. Those are both part of the embellishment. The very first one is an artwork outline of it, and the second is actually the stitches of the embellishment. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change these. We're going to resize them, and we're going to do that with our transform control up here. So you want to make sure that both of them are still selected. Come up to the transform box here in your properties, and we're going to increase it to 5 1/4. So we want to make sure that maintain aspect ratio is checked. You're going to be in inches here, and this is kind of a new unique feature in MDQ2 and also FTCU. Even though we're in millimeters over here in our design view, in our properties box we have the option of working in millimeters or inches independent of what our display or our workspace looks like. So we're going to be in inches, maintain aspect ratios checked. We're going to come in here and we're going to type in 5.25 inches, and we are going to click apply. Before I do that, notice at the bottom the height also changed. So I'm going to click apply, and that's going to make our design fill the block a little bit better. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to select the first two items in the sequence view. So the way I do that is click on the first one, and then I'm going to click on the second one holding down the control key when I click the second one. So that's going to select both of these items, and what I actually want to do is I want to create a hole in this outer block with the outline of the feather design, our embellishment. And I do that by clicking on my combine icon. When I have two like things selected, by clicking, as long as they're one's completely inside the other, and in this case our artwork outline of the embellishment is totally inside our block outline. If I click that, it's actually going to make a hole of that shape in the center. And you can't really see it too well on the screen here, but you can see over here in the sequence view, I've now got one object that has that hole here in the center. And what we're going to do now that we have this selected is we're actually going to fill this outside area that we've just done with a texture fill to hold the batting down for the relief of our trapunto design. So we're going to come over here to our textures, and we're going to click on our textures. And that's going to bring up a properties box over here with our texture design. We're going to change the texture from the default of 242. We're going to change it to pattern 264. So the way we do that is click the down arrow, and we're going to scroll down a little bit till we find pattern 264, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click that. We also want to make our pattern size a little bit tighter to hold that batting down. We're going to change our pattern size from the default of 15 to 10. So I'm just going to type in 10. We'll leave our stitch length alone, and we're going to go ahead and click Apply. Now you can see that we filled in this outside area with our texture, but we haven't encroached on the inside area. That's because the fill went in the shape of our artwork. Now, one of the cool things about MDQ2 versus FTCU is that in FTCU, when we click these icons down here, which we lovingly call the OneClick Wonders, when you click them in FTCU, it actually converts, say, this artwork piece we had up here into the appropriate stitch type that you've checked down here. MDQ2 works a little bit differently with artwork, and that it doesn't actually convert. It first makes a copy of artwork and then converts it into stitches. So you can see I have my fill stitches of that texture fill down here, but my original artwork is still intact. And we're going to actually use that feature to our advantage right now by reselecting our artwork. And in order to enhance the look of the trapunto, we're going to add a line of stitching around the feathers. And we're just simply going to click that, and we're going to come down to our run, and we're going to click our run stitch, and that's actually going to add a run stitch. This is actually going to define the outside of the block, and it's going to highlight the inside with a run stitch around there. So now you can see we've got a fill followed by a run, and our artwork that we created that run stitch from is still there, which is a cool thing. Now we're going to add another trapunto feature. We're actually going to add a line of stitching around the center here, around this block, and we're going to do that again by creating a piece of artwork that matches it, and that's going to be a circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to our artwork tool. We're going to, or our custom shapes tool rather, we are going to click the little drop down arrow, and this time we're going to select an ellipse. You're going to want to come somewhere in the middle here, and you want to hold down the control key, which again is going to give us a perfect circle. So you're going to hold down the control key, and you're going to click and drag a circle. And again, very important, let up the mouse before letting up the control key. The size and position of the circle doesn't matter because we're going to numerically resize it to where we want and center it automatically in the block. We're actually going to move it around to get it centered. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here to our transform. We're going to change our width to 2.85 inches and make sure that maintain aspect ratio is checked. It should be if you haven't changed it. So 2.85 inches. Notice how the bottom one changes, and click Apply. Now we've got a circle, but it is not aligned to our other circle. So what we're going to do is move our cursor into the center here, and we're just actually going to drag it into place. And I'm purposefully not going to line it up. I'm going to leave it a little bit over to the left and maybe down just a hair, because we're going to show you a feature that's great for moving it, or what we call nudging it slightly into position. And you do that with the control key in combination with the arrow keys on your keyboard. So I'm going to hold down control, and I apologize you can't actually see me holding down my keys, but I'm holding down control, and now I'm clicking the left arrow, and you can see how I'm just nudging it into position, and it needs to come up just a little bit and maybe back just one nudge, and there we go. That looks pretty good. So I've used my control key in concert with the arrow keys to nudge that piece of artwork into position. So next we are going to bring in another embellishment. So I'm going to come up to our embellishment right here. I'm going to click it. This time you want to click the down arrow and select hearts, because we're going to put a heart in the center. We're going to use this heart O2D. So we're going to bring that in. It's automatically going to come in centered. Again, it's got a piece of artwork around it as well as the stitches. So there's an artwork outline around that heart and the actual stitches of the heart. We are going to resize this one more time. We're going to come back to our transform box, and we are going to change the width to 2 inches. Now make sure maintain aspect ratios check. Now this is not a symmetrical design, so you can see that the height and width are a little bit different, but we're just going to change the width to 2, but our height is going to change along with it to stay symmetrical. So we are going, or not symmetrical, but proportional. So we're going to go ahead and click apply, and that's going to make it bigger. Now mathematically, that heart is perfectly centered on our design, but visually it's not. It looks a little bit high to me. You can see there's less space up here than there is down here. So we're actually going to just come into the center of it anywhere here when you see that hand icon, and the easiest way to do it is just get into the center. When you see that little hand, that means if I click and drag now, I'll move it. So I'm just going to click and drag it down to where it's visually centered. Maybe that's a little bit too far. Okay, back up. All right, so just go ahead and visually center it if you agree that it looks better that way. It's totally up to you if you don't want to. So now that we have it in place, we are going to click the very first item in the hearts here in the sequence view. So we're going to click that one. So we're selecting the artwork outline around the heart. I'm going to scroll back, or I don't really need to scroll actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to come up one more and I'm going to click that circle, but before I click it, I'm going to hold down Control. So what I've done now is I've selected these 2 artwork items here. We're going to do the same combine trick to knock a hole out of the circle that we created in the shape of that heart. So I'm going to do that, and you can see now I've created an artwork item that has that hole in the shape of the heart. Now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to fill that outside area with a texture to create our trapunto, but we are going to do that with a different texture. So we're going to come down and click our texture, and we're going to get that default to 242. This time we're going to select 247. So we're going to click that one, and the size of this one for that pattern is fine. So we're going to leave it alone. We're going to click apply, and that's going to put a nice texture pattern in there around the heart. Now we're going to click on this artwork one more time. Remember that MDQ2 leaves our original artwork in place when it creates stitches out of it. We're going to do the same thing we did with this artwork here. We're going to create a nice run stitch around that whole design area in the center to enhance it. So we're going to come down to our OneClick Wonder of Run Stitch here, click Run, and that's going to add a run stitch at the bottom here that's going to enhance and tack down that trapunto. The next thing we need to do is we're going to do this trapunto in the hoop, and we're going to do it in a very unique way. In order to do that, we need some special stitches. We need to have a tack down stitch around it, and you'll see how and why this is important when we get to the assembly. But we're going to create that, and we're going to do it to 3 different things, but we're going to do it in 3 steps. So there's going to be 3 items that we're going to do all these 3 steps on. So I'm going to walk you through them all. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select this run stitch right here, and we're going to create an outline around it, and we're going to do that by coming up to our Create Outlines tool right here. So we're going to click our Create Outlines. If your ripples is set to anything but 1, you want to change it. It usually defaults to 5, but once you change it, it'll stay on whatever you defaulted it to, or you changed it to rather. So I've already played with this block, so mine's already on 1. If yours is on 5, either type in a 1 or use the arrow keys to move down to a 1. you want to make sure your spacing is set to 0 because we're going to hug that stitch right around the outline. And you want to make sure you've got cascade right here. And then join repeats definitely wants to be unchecked because there are no repeats. And then remove selection also wants to be unchecked. So your box wants to look like this. When it does, click OK. All right, and that's going to create a run stitch at the bottom of our sequence view from that particular item. We're going to do the same thing with the run stitch of our heart here. So we're going to click that. We're going to create an outline around it. I don't need to change anything because it's already set up. And we're going to click OK. And the last one we want to do is the run stitch of our fill here. So we want to select this one here. So we're going to select that fill. We're going to create an outline around it, and we're going to click OK. So now we've created, if we scroll down to the bottom of our sequence view, 3 new run stitches, and they're in the default color of the Floriani Poly 3435 Deep Ocean. The bottom one is selected, or should be selected. If it's not, go ahead and select it. What we're going to do is select the other 2. So we're going to hold down our Control key and select the second one up, and lastly the next one up. So now we've got all those run stitches that we've created. Actually, they're not run stitches yet. I apologize. They are artwork at this point because the Create Outline tool created artwork with it. We're going to turn them into run stitches, though. We're going to do it exactly the same way we did before by clicking our run stitch icon. And now we've created some runs around it. We're going to make those runs be a little bit bolder. And we're going to do that by changing them into bean stitches. Okay, so we're going to come all the way down to the bottom. They're all still selected now. They are all run stitches. We're going to change our type to bean, and we are going to click Apply. Now we're going to scroll down in our sequence view again. Now there's 2 different colors here. We want them all to stitch out together. We want them to be a totally different color than is in the design. And we are going to right-click on, first of all, we're going to move them up to the top. I'm sorry. So we're going to right-click on them. And when you do that, a new menu is going to pop up, and there's a Move item on the menu. When you click on that item, a new pop-out is going to come out. And one of the things that you see is first. So that's a really quick way to move all 3 of those items up to stitch out first. So we've now got them all stitching out first. And I'm going to now click on the color that I want them to be. And in the printed instructions, it says the first color. We have got an extra color in here, and I'm not exactly sure why. I probably missed a color change step in there somewhere, but I don't see it. It could be just an anomaly, but go ahead and click on the blue wherever it shows up, and that'll change them all to blue. So you can see now that all of these items are going to stitch out at the very, very beginning, and there'll be a total of 4 of them. So there's going to be all these 4 run stitches at the top here. So what we're going to do next is simply save it because we are done. So we've created these lines up here, and they're basically going to become placement lines for our block. Actually, they're going to be tack down lines. I'm sorry, not placement lines. And we're going to just save it now. So you want to come up to the Save icon and click that, and it's going to ask you where to save it. Now you can see here that I've already saved it as Trapunto block. So I'm going to just click that and click Save one more time. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite it, and I'm going to say yes, I do. If you've never saved it before, you can type in whatever name you want and save it there. and then that's saving it in our WAF format, which is our internal format, but that won't stitch. So you're going to need to save it as a stitch file. So I'm going to come here and select File. This time I'm going to say Save As instead of Save. And now in the drop-down down here, I'm going to select a stitch file type. So let me just, for example, select Baby Lock Brother Bernina PES version 9. And I haven't saved that as that type of stitch file before, so there's nothing here. But it's given me the same name, Trapunto block, so that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save that stitch file. Now I've got that stitch file saved. I can load it into the machine and stitch out the block. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go through our stitch out and assembly instructions. I'm going to restart up my PowerPoint. And I'm going to breeze through the first couple of slides because you've already seen these. Again, this is where we're headed. This is what it's going to look like. And I just want to remind you that this is the second of 6 blocks. And there's going to be 1 block every month. And each block, you want to stitch it out 4 times because at the end of the 6 months, you'll have a total of 24 blocks. 6 times 4 is 24. And they're going to be joined together to create a final quilt that's going to be 40 inches by 25 inches, and it's going to be a wall hanging quilt. And the materials list that's going to come on the next slide is going to list the materials required for this particular block, so block number 2. But you want to go back, if you've not created block number 1 yet, to get the complete list, including the fabric. You want to go back to those instructions and see the fabric choices, watch that video, whatever, because you want to choose fabrics that are going to be all harmonious with the entire quilt. So right now we're going to assume you've already done that. If you haven't, you want to go back and check out block number 1. So the materials you're absolutely going to need for this particular block, above and beyond the fabric and other things that are in the other materials list, are you're going to need some Floriani Quilted Soft bamboo cotton blend batting. And it's important not to substitute this batting because we're going to be using the unique properties of it as we do our trapunto technique. Same with the next item, which is your Floriani Quilted Soft polyester batting. Again, important not to substitute that batting either. You want a piece of some Floriani water-soluble topping. You're going to choose embroidery and bobbin thread. You want to choose colors that work well with your fabric choices. You're going to need some R&K embroidery perfection tape. You're going to need the Floriani Heatcraft tool. And for this project, you're going to need a minimum 6-inch by 6-inch or 150 by 150 millimeter hoop size. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here. Before we get started, just some important notes. The following directions will be referring to the different colors as they were saved in the design. The color names may appear different on your machine. In fact, they probably will. Some of the color changes in here are in the design to make the machine stop between steps. Now, even though the machine stops, it's there so you can take the hoop out and do various things and then put the hoop back. You can leave the same thread in or you can change the color. That's up to you. But if you have a multi-needle machine, you want to use the controls on your machine to insert those stop commands to make sure that the machine stops between colors, because as you know, if you have a multi-needle, it's going to want to switch the thread on you and continue sewing on. But we want it to stop so we can pull the hoop out, do some things with it. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to load up the trapunto block design into your machine, and you want to hoop a piece of the Floriani Quilted Soft Bamboo Cotton Blend batting. So it's important, again, not to substitute, and you want to get this good and tight in the hoop. The next thing you want to do is center 3 7-inch squares of the Floriani Quilted Soft polyester batting in the hoop. Again, it's important not to substitute. You want to cover it with an 8-inch square water-soluble topping, and that's there mainly to make it easy to hold everything down. And you want to secure all the layers with some embroidery perfection tape, and you see we've used quite a lot here to get it nice and tight and hold it down. Then you're going to attach the hoop to your machine, and you're going to stitch out that first color choice, which is going to be that blue color, and that's going to be that tack down stitch, and you're going to stitch out just like you see here. it's going to stitch out all the layers of the batting to the bottom batting, which we've hooped up. Then you're going to remove the hoop from the machine, and you're going to tear away all of the topping, and it's going to be looking like this when you're done. Next thing you want to do is plug in your Floriani Heatcraft tool and let it warm up. You want to be very careful because this tool gets very hot. Make sure you only touch the handle. And you want to then gently lift the poly batting, and what we're going to do is we're going to melt it away from the stitch line. So instead of getting in there with the scissors and cutting, we're going to be using the Heatcraft tool to cut it away. And you can see in the picture here, we've cut a little bit of the outside so you can get the idea, and you can see in the picture they're cutting the inside. Now what's going to happen is because we use the cotton bamboo batting as the base, it won't melt. But the polyester is going to melt just like butter away from the stitches. So it's very, very easy to do. That Heatcraft tool glides right through the batting. But if it starts to tug, stop, pull the tool out, and let the tool get warm again for 30 seconds. If you've going too fast or got a lot of batting there, sometimes it can cool the tool down so it'll start to tug. Won't hurt anything. Just pull it out and let it reheat for a few seconds, like 30 seconds, and do the rest of it. Once you've melted all the batting away, it's going to look like this. But if you've used polyester thread, it may also melt some of the stitches. Now normally you don't need to really worry about that because those stitches will end up being hidden, and there'll be plenty of stitches there left to hold everything down. But if that bothers you, you can use cotton thread for this tack down step instead, and then you won't melt the thread. So next you want to flip the hoop upside down, and you want to center a 7-inch square piece of backing fabric right side up on the back, and you want to secure it tightly with embroidery perfection tape. So this is the shot of our backing fabric on the back side of the hoop. Flip the hoop right side up, and this time you want to center a 7-inch square piece of your top fabric and secure it with embroidery perfection tape. Now notice that we've used quite a bit of tape here because there's going to be quite a bit of bulk on the top. We want to get it held nice and firm and stretched as tight as you can. And the other thing to be mindful of on the back and the top is just make sure that the tape is close to the edge so you don't stitch over the tape. Next, you're going to attach the hoop to the machine and stitch out the remaining color, which is going to be your quilting intrapunto stitches. And a note is that you might want to use the same color thread in the bobbin as in the top for this step. Unless your tension is really well balanced, you may see some bobbin thread coming up on the top. It just depends a lot on your machine and your machine settings and how well your tension's balanced. But to play it safe, if you use the same color thread in the bobbin, you won't have any issues. And another side note is that if you use the R&K micro thread in the bobbin, it will match the top thread, assuming you choose matching thread in the top and bobbin. And you won't have to readjust your bobbin case tension because the micro thread is bobbin weight. So that's just a little tip for you. And once you've stitched that out, you want to remove the hoop from the machine, unhoop the block, and then you're going to trim the block a 1/4 inch from the stitching on all 4 sides. Using a transparent ruler, a quilting ruler, and a rotary cutter makes this pretty easy. When you're done, each block is going to be slightly less than 6.5 inches square. And again, you want to repeat this 3 more times to make a total of 4 blocks. We want to thank everybody for attending because that completes the assembly of the block. You're going to want to use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project at home. We invite you for sure to come back next month for the next block in the series. And don't forget to post your block on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page if you want to take part in our contest. So that's it, DJ. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, don't think I have anything else to add. Great job, and thank you again for another wonderful webinar. And make sure you download the May project, as all these instructions are there. And we look forward to seeing you next time. We also look forward to seeing the blocks that you make on our Facebook page.
Yep.
So
all right.
With that, I think we're done, and we'll see you all next time.
Okay, see you next month.